Hello, everybody. I'm your host, Russell Hill of the WTF podcast, and that's What the Fix Stops podcast to all of you great people out there. And I'm joined today by
Hello, everyone. I'm Charity, the co host here today, and we have Scott Falcone with us. He is the dealer at World Kia Joliet and World Hyundai Matheson. So, Scott, welcome. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate being here.
I'm sure that a lot of people know who you are and they know about you, but we want to hear from you. Just a quick overview of who you are and what you do.
It's pretty simple. Like as you said, I'm the dealer at the stores, I think I probably do a lot of non-traditional things that dealers normally would do that I steer clear of. I came up through the ranks. I started as a salesman in the business. I guess it'll be knocking on 30 years ago. I had a couple of lucky breaks, promotions that happened fast and early, and had a real lucky opportunity to buy into a store 20 plus years ago, 25 years ago, and slowly worked my way in with small percentages and gambling your life savings over and over and over. And things have worked out. So here I am now.
you got two amazing brands, Kia and Hyundai. I mean, they're really hot.
Yeah, it's no, I don't think we could have predicted, this, the Hyundai store's been there for almost 20 and bought the Kia store about 10 years ago. We've had a couple Chevy stores in between there too. One, I was on the wrong end of a letter in '09 when General Motors was handing out, 1,000 letters to dealers.
I remember.
Congratulations, you're out of business. And then bought and sold another one along the way. Got a used car store as well, and have also been in software development for dealers, and kind of currently heading in that direction an awful lot right now. We've got some things coming out in the first quarter with that, but our brands are really unbelievable. We're super excited and fortunate to have those.
Yeah, they're hot. They're hot brands.
They are. Yep. Different ways. I think that Kia kind of has the hot hand on product right now. A lot of people are, have opinions on the OEM side, who's doing what for whom and so on and so forth, programs. But we've got a really good relationship, with both manufacturers. So, it's pretty hard to complain about, what we've got going right now. We're blessed.
It sounds like, and I'm always curious to ask dealers this, you have an appetite for risk, but you did mention luck. What do you think is the combination that kind of got you to where you are? Is it luck? Is it your risk appetite? Is it hard work? Is it a combination of those things?
Yeah, it's for sure a combination. And, you've got to put yourself out there. You've got to take, other risks. It's not just pushing your chips in, it's risking, it's risking failing in all senses of the word. I think that I got into sales probably when I was really young, just to overcome fear of. Not really sure what the fear of was, because now I feel like I'm fearless, but I wasn't. And I think that was a learned trait. And so going to sales, knowing you're going to hear a ton of no's over and over and over, gives you thick skin, and it gives you perspective. And it also, I guess, perspective, right? Who cares? What do I worry about what somebody thinks? You're going to be criticized for doing something. You're going to be criticized for doing nothing. You might as well be criticized for doing something that makes sense to you and is hopefully good and positive in the world. So can't worry about that. Can't worry about failing. And you get thick skin after failing enough, and you realize it's just part of growing, right? There's certainly no growth going to occur in comfort. So it's best to get uncomfortable as fast as you can, as young as you can, and realize, what a gift that can be when you start recognizing that. So, yeah, I think that, the luck part is kind of a byproduct maybe of, opportunity meets preparation and so on and so forth, all the old cliches. And, there's a lot of truth to that. To me, it's, this similar to rubbing two sticks together, you might get a spark, that's the byproduct. So working hard, putting yourself out there, being in the right place at the right time, those are the two sticks that rub together, and the spark is luck in some cases. So yeah, I feel like I've had a lot of luck and kind of set the table for it, but sometimes it shows up, sometimes it doesn't.
Yep. You just defined in a nutshell what luck is. I mean, as far as coincidence or chance, personally, I don't believe in it. You create your own luck, and you did that by I started the same thing. This is my 41st year, but for 16 of those, I started selling in 1985. Oh, similar to what I learned that really my life is at the edge of my comfort zone. It's not in my comfort zone. That's where I meet people like you, people that inspire and motivate me to step out because, there's fear of what you know and fear of what you don't know. But a lot of people can't handle that rejection. No, no, no. And no to me is just next opportunity to get you closer to the yes. All the things you and I and Charity that we've learned over the years, you win, you lose, but you get back up and you continue to grind. And I can hear some people right now. Scott's just lucky. He just fell into the right thing at the right time. Well, they don't understand the 20 years of preparation before that.
No, I'm a 30-year overnight success. Absolutely.
Right. So, and everybody wants to know how to do it. Why don't you think about what you're reading and who you associate with and what you're listening to? It's working your ass off is what it is. And wanting more and understanding how to cope with no or insecurities.
Well, and I'm curious what you think. Do you think your trajectory would have been different if you had started out, say, as a porter or, maybe as a technician? Do you think you would have went on the same path, or do you think being in sales was sort of imperative to your outcome?
I've quite honestly, I've only known sales. So I don't ever see myself signing up. When I recognized that I was able to be in sales, let's not say I was good at sales until some point.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess, when you're younger and you don't have a lot of options or opportunities, and, we didn't grow up in a wealthy environment, quite the opposite, single mom raising a couple kids and so on. And I figured out we probably were, described as broke at a pretty young age. And I thought that maybe it'd be good to get to work. And so when you're young, there's not too many jobs you do. So, you're a janitor, I'm a baseball umpire, a hockey referee, whatever it took at the time. And as I got a little bit older, I definitely, had an entrepreneurial, streak or seizure, one of the two. I'm not sure what it was, but I think the first thing that I figured out how to, or when I thought sales made some sense, was I saved some money up and I bought a gross 12 dozen keychains to take to school to sell in 6th grade. And they were not proud of this, but it didn't matter, I guess, but they were beer bottle opener keychains, because every 6th grader needs a keychain with them.
Of course they do.
Makes perfect sense, right? And I sold them all real fast and made some money. So went back, to this wholesale place in the city where I live in Chicago. And I forget what I bought next, and took that. And so I said, I think if I can steer clear of, the porter path or the physical labor path, that's not probably going to generate a lot of opportunity in life. And I did have some random mentors around when I think back to some people no longer in my life, and they weren't there very long, but some of the things that they used to say was impactful. This is, when you're a little kid, and this is going back a long time ago, right? 45 years ago, 50 years ago for me. And they'd tell you, how do you make $50,000? Now that would be the equivalent of, how do you make $250,000 probably, or $300,000? But one of them was sales. There was inheritance and open your own business and all those things when you're a little kid. That's just not going to happen. And so the only thing on the list was sales for me. And so, that was kind of what grabbed me and drove me there and kept me there, quite honestly. That fear was certainly there too. It wasn't just like, I couldn't wait to go out and hear no, but I thought that would be a good path to, for whatever it is you're going to wind up doing. Thicken you up, I guess, is, why I got into it, to toughen up. And, then it just became my life.
It served you well, Scott. And a little bit about what you were talking about, the way you grew up. I think sales in automotive, and what it's done for me, has been a real equalizer, because I've had a lot of things in my life where traditional jobs for, there's some drug and alcohol problems back in the day. And it's like those really made a lot of things unavailable to me. And sales in the automotive business was like the greatest equalizer of all, particularly if you're hungry and you want it, and you're honest and open and willing to learn. But at first I didn't surround myself with people like that. Unfortunately, I didn't really know. how important this hard drive is, and what you read and what you listen to and what you hear can really corrupt that hard drive. And like, you are who you associate with, you are what you eat, all those types of things. You mentioned some early mentors. Is there one that you maybe haven't thought of in a while that might have come to mind?
I probably I probably overused the word mentor. People who gave me some random advice that stuck with me. I didn't really have any mentors as a kid, or a young adult. I think that's why I growing up in scarcity as opposed to abundance also made me very conservative. So I sound like I had a lot of risk, and I probably did for most people, but I should have been a lot riskier in the business. I'm sure I'd have a lot more, but I didn't. But I learned by through failing and pain, quite honestly. You stuck your hand in the fire and you found out it was hot, and most people will do it 3 and 4 times, right? And that's the one
Yeah.
thing that if I had any skill set, it was I knew after the first time it was hot, right? So I didn't have to go back. And then I thought, well, my job ought to be to share this with everybody else, and be a mentor, or a teacher. And I should, because it's going to improve my business anyway. So look, this is what you don't do. I've tried this. And then you'll make a lot more money. We'll all make a lot more money doing it the right way. So we would work our way through failure consistently. And, it's really something that I encourage everybody to do. I still love to fall down on my face publicly. And I encourage them to do it and do things that are completely outside of their comfort zone so that they are uncomfortable. And then when you find something that works, we call it law, and we install it in a process, in a procedure, and it's law. And we stick with it. When we find out it doesn't work, we just don't go back and repeating it. Edison, once he flipped the switch and the light went on, he didn't say, let's keep working on this thing. He said, I landed the jet. We're here.
Right.
Not everybody listens to that, which is amazing. And I've got all the scars to prove it, and all the arrows in my back as a pioneer. And yet they still sometimes want to go down the path that I tell them, don't go down there. You're going to get the same thing that I got. But I have shortened some people's learning curves through failing. So I'm the chief, fail officer in some instances in the company. And there's a lot of people that like that, and there's a lot of people that have also, embraced it, because if they see that I'm okay, falling down, or encouraging them, or clapping for their failures, they're more likely to continue to try things.
Absolutely. I have a lot of acronyms. One of them is for FAIL, and that's the first attempt in learning. I had many mentors, but I didn't have them until much later in my life. I was the kid that when I got burned, I would see if my left hand would burn like my right hand, and I would go at it again. Unfortunately, I made a lot of those, but you know what? I kept getting back up, and then I met somebody, I would say, like you, Scott, that understood how getting out of your comfort zone and taking risk and just get back up, because anything short of fail is quitting. But if you get back up and you keep going, it's like, I would say I mentor a lot of people, probably like you do. Most of them don't get it. They'll say the right things, but they stop short of, it's the long game. It's getting up every day and being consistent and finding out what works. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's an individual, approach or attitude, right? I mean, you can, dump all these words of wisdom on everybody. Some people are going to grab it. I mean, the saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. As a leader, the real trick is finding out what makes the horse thirsty, right? And that is the tricky part. But if you're going to spend time, working with young people, or people in a company, your company, you really do have to consider, what makes them thirsty, and everybody's a little bit different. It's a job, if you're going to really take those people on, quite honestly.
Absolutely. The what and how can actually come pretty easy if you focus on the why. Is that what I hear you saying? Like, what drives it? What is their why?
Yeah, that's for sure. And discovering it one by one, in a large company, whether you've got 50 or 500 employees, isn't so easy. You hope in that case that your cultural approach infiltrates and infects in a positive way, the other executive management staff, and a fish stinks from the head down, and it just the opposite too, right? We can make a lot of impact from the top down with just a handful of people. So you hope that the culture kicks in that instance, what you're saying, and that your team is going to continue to spread the gospel, so to speak.
I want to ask you about your culture, Scott. What kind of culture do you like to promote? And in addition to that, I would love to hear what differences you have found between age groups in your business. Do you find that there's a huge motivation difference between the older working groups and then the younger ones?
Um, I'll answer your culture question initially. I think that a lot of definitions of it. I mean, I think that what you do when nobody's watching, is one definition of your culture, and you know that. But when people realize, what you stand for, what your brand represents, and so on and so forth, that's what culture is inside of a store. But it is once you know what you're supposed to do, and have a standard, you have to adhere to it. You have to stay the course, right? We run our business on process and procedure, not gut hunch, not instinct. Through all of those failures that led to law, why would I do anything different than that, right? So when you talk about a culture, we have very high standards, a very high bar for a variety of things. Some of them might seem insignificant. Our scripts are very important to us. Not that you say the exact words the exact way, but so that you understand the concept of it and do things in your own work. But little things that do make a difference that add up. So that's the type of culture that we have. It revolves a lot around solid standards and processes and procedures. As far as the differences in the age gap and the differences in workers, I think that I don't know that there's that much of it. Certainly there's a difference, but you've got great players, right? That are 23 years old, and you've got lazy 23-year-olds, and you've got great 55-year-old, employees, and you've got real lazy 55-year-old employees. So, nothing changes in that regard, right? And you manage them and you lead them, accordingly. And accountability, I guess if I left that out of our culture, probably sits at the top of the pyramid, quite honestly. And I think with process and procedure, it's almost a given. But we are a very accountable company, and we don't give a ton of chances, quite honestly. We don't just consider somebody's career over for a mistake. But if you're a repetitive offender, you're just not fitting into our little community, right? And nobody wants that, not me,
Nope.
and not the producers, right? Because eagles don't fly with turkeys, period. You'll never see those two animals together. You'll never see eagles pecking the ground for scraps, and you'll never see turkeys soaring with eagles, right? So you can't keep turkeys in your organization, right, and count on the eagles to support them, because the eagles will leave, right? And you're going to lose your best people by allowing your worst people to not uphold your standards. So accountability is also a big thing. And so holding everybody accountable, whether it's the youth, or the seniority, it has to be doled out fairly. I don't believe in equal. I believe in fair, in a manner in which you've earned and deserve to be treated, not the same. But you still got to dole it out. That's for sure.
That's a good one. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
We've heard similar fair but not equal treatment before. And it seems like a great way to manage, and a great way to keep all of your employees are on the same level and all of them happy. Let me tell you about a partner that's actually helping dealers get ahead, Global Dealer Solutions. If you've been wondering how to use AI the right way in your dealership, especially on the fixed side, these are the people to call. Their team gets it. Not just the tech, but the real challenges that dealerships face every day. We're talking about conversational AI that doesn't just respond, it converts. It books appointments, follows up with service leads, even answers customer questions with actual relevance. It's not replacing your team, it's making sure your team can focus on what matters most, closing ROs and building relationships. But GDS isn't just about AI. They train your staff, drive traffic, and tighten up processes so your results stick long after the tool is turned on. And everything they do is built around one goal: growth that is real. If you want more service traffic, better follow-up, and a partner that's always a step ahead, check them out. Visit gdsdealers.com, follow them on LinkedIn at gdsdealers, or just shoot them a message and ask, what would you do with my store? And see what they come back with. Global Dealer Solutions, process-driven, people first, always on it.
When you made a particular decision at your store based upon what you just said that maybe looked small at the time, but it ended up having a huge impact, it would probably fit into some of those cultural things that you just talked about. Is there one that really surprised you?
There was one that I remember as a young, early GM at a store that I was fortunate enough to be involved in, where we were, we went from 80 cars to 500 cars, and at the time we were knocking on in the fours, and we had a team of about 40 salespeople, and
Wow.
just really a zoo and a crazy place, and a lot of fun at the time. And we had a salesperson there who was a veteran, and he wound up in the store, and he was a guy that was putting out between 25 and 30 cars, good gross, solid, but boy, he was just cancer, and he was just tough. He was late. He had substance problems and all that, and I worked with him and managed him and everything else. And he just didn't want to cooperate on any level. And I remember he kind of gave me, he gave me, it was an either or, right? An ultimatum. And I remember my office, there was no door on it. There was walls, but there was no ceiling. It was kind of strange. And there was a door, there was no doors. I don't know why we had the walls, and you could see through everything going that way. He had come in, and I probably would always have 6 or 7 people in there waiting for deals and whatever. And he laid down some ultimatum. I don't remember what it was. And I, sat there for a second while everybody looked at me. And that was the first time anybody had ever done that. And I said, this will be my defining moment, And I said, I'm going to let you know something. I honor all ultimatums. So, essentially I offered him the opportunity to leave. And I said, now, if you want to go back to your desk and rethink and rephrase what you just said, that you would appreciate it if I would do this, or I would consider that, as opposed to do this or else. I said, I'll give you a second chance to rephrase that if you want to. And he chose not to. And I chose to, evict him from the building. And that was a defining moment for me, that I said that I will always honor all ultimatums. I will give you a chance to rephrase it, because some people don't realize what's going to happen, because if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. And that one's always served me well. Was no ultimatums in my life. I'm not going to be a hostage. And I try. We do have some people that are leaders in the company that are still hostages. They're hostages in the service department to a bad advisor, right, or a bad technician or something. Well, I can't replace him, or this and that. And I said, you can't go through life as a hostage.
No, it actually costs you more in the long run. It just causes dissension in the ranks, because, like you mentioned, you have a culture and you stand for certain things, and being fair but accountable as well. Yeah, most people wouldn't. 25, 30 car a month guy, they'll keep them on, given the poison and the cancer, but it hampers your growth.
Yeah, you hear so many stories about, the opposite side of that. And so many people are so happy when they finally make the decision. And, you do that a couple, right. Yeah. And you do that a couple times, and guess what happens? Now, all of a sudden that becomes part of your culture, where, the Eagles see that. Well, they don't fool around with this. You know what I mean? The guy's a producer, or she's a producer, but they're not going to allow cancer to, infiltrate this place. And it's better. And, those are things you got to do quicker, than most people are willing to do them. People, make changes, with pain and pleasure, and pain motivates about 20 to 1 outside of that. But the faster you pull the pain forward, of getting rid of this 25 car, cancer, or this advisor who can't show up, on time 15 minutes late every day with a line outside, and so on and so forth, but they're producers. The faster you suck the pain up of keeping those people on board and get rid of them, the faster you move on. And that sends a message to your people as well, that you do stand for something, and accountability matters.
Yeah, I had all of us probably have some experience if we've ever ran a store to any level, and they think they can't be replaced, and I would never get fired. And somebody, maybe that was a wake up call for that guy, Scott. Maybe it was. Maybe it wasn't.
Yeah, I'm sure that the people that we've let go and terminated, there's so many managers in Chicago market, of people that have worked with us in the past and who were sales or in management that just, they just didn't make it, and they went on to great careers and successful careers, and I feel really good when every now and then somebody reaches out, 10 or 15 years later after, I threw them out, and they thanked me or they appreciated it. I wish I was smarter and had figured out a way to work with more of them, because I'd have the bigger and stronger staff, but that's okay. They went on to do, good things in the industry, and I'm happy to have been part of their successes too, even through some temporary failures.
An old boss of mine, that he actually was, I worked for Van Tile for many years, and he was, had 30 Van Tile stores as a managing partner before they got bought out by Berkshire Hathaway. Anyway, in 1994, he fired me. And he's fixing to visit with Cherry and I because he's had a tremendous impact on my life. And so we're going to talk about that. And we talked a little, every year I communicate with him in this one particular way, but we had a 30-minute conversation. Was it yesterday? Maybe the day before yesterday, to get further his thoughts. So we kind of opened up some things that were happening back then, and he had no clue they had that level of impact on my life. And
Yeah.
it did. It was a defining moment. It was that fork in the road, and it was either hellfire and damnation, or get it together. And it completely changed my life. People like you need to hear that when you fire people. Sometimes they get it. Other times they don't. You just love them where they're at and move on down the road, right?
Yeah, I was thinking back to somebody who I respected, still respect a lot, and I had a conversation. This is how many years ago? Probably 30 or so, and it was just his philosophy on firing and bringing people back. And he said, depends on why I fire them. Sometimes eagles need a chance to spread their wings. And I said, that's a good philosophy. I'll take the high road and I'll remember that. So, we normally will reconsider rehires, and challenging times in people's lives too, right? People,
Sure.
You said yourself, you struggled with some issues, and, you were a different guy from who you are along the way to now. And I certainly believe that, in the industry. And the industry is, talk about a double-edged sword. I mean, it's such an amazing industry that allows for so many wonderful second chances for people, just unbelievable. And I absolutely, I love and embrace the industry for giving, those without education, and just those that lack an opportunity to succeed on so many levels. And I hate the industry because it allows for that as well. We don't have, there's not a lot of tests to get into this business, as you know,
True.
that you have to pass. But, I'll take that glass half full side of that as the other side of it. When you think, how did this person get in the business? And you go, well, the same question could be asked of, your guy over there that's
Exactly.
that's delivering 30 cars. And, I had to go through some of them to get, some of her or some of him. You just got to take them both.
Sometimes it's not even second chance. It's third and fourth chances.
You're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to ask you, Scott, what is the number one struggle that you have as a dealer? And it happens no matter no matter how good things are going, you still always have that struggle.
We are struggling with scaling because we've not taken recruiting seriously enough. We really haven't. And, I do have a full-time recruiter that I may or may not need for, our operation, a couple of hundred people. But I'm really glad that we have one, and it's, in the scheme of our expenses, it's not that terrible. And, this particular girl that's working there, she's what I like about what she's doing that's helping us right now, and it's important right now because I know we have the ability to scale to do so much more with what we've got. Our facilities are all done. We're well capitalized. We have inventory. There's just no excuses. We market, we do it all, right? So why aren't we doing better? And we're doing really well by all standards, but we have a high bar. So she really has helped with pointing out to our executive team, who's normally in the hiring process, right? Somebody at the GSM or new car manager level or general manager is going to be involved in hiring for the BDC, for sales, and so on and so forth. And they do a pretty good job of that. They select some pretty good people. They go through the right processes. They check the boxes. They do things, and then they get there and they're gone. There's just, the integration into the store, it just ends. And there's the management staff and there's the sales staff, and they're not even doing it on purpose. Like, well, we hired them. Who cares? Figure it out. They just get caught up in their busy life. Their sales driven life, and they lose sight of their administrative life. And I read something somebody was talking about, and they used this phrase to front and back of a sentence or something, and it was about admin and away, and it was I pieced it together. You can't admin away your sales team, your sales, your producers, and I call it clerk work. I don't want more clerk work on my producers. Number one, it makes no sense to do that, right, when they're there to produce. But number two, they're probably not cut out for it. The reason they're a producer isn't because they're organized, right? Or they're really good at Excel or any number of other things that you wish that they were, and they're not. And so, we have to continue to give them support. Well, that's the same thing that's happening with my big struggle, which is recruiting more people and better people in volume. Really, we need people. I certainly want great people, but we need more people just to handle the leads and to handle our customers. And she's been working a lot harder in that 1 week to 2 month period to get them onboarded properly and to integrate them. And that has been my biggest struggle right now is really to make sure that the overall culture is hey, we're excited about your career here. And they'll work so hard and put money in their pocket, the salesmen and the BDC, the management staff will. They're just the best in the business at what they do, making deals that should never happen, and so on and so forth. And the salesmen really love that. But salespeople need, more than just a check in some cases, and they're not going to get to a check unless they feel integrated, in the system either, right? I didn't get this. Nobody's paying attention to me. And, I love when it, well, whose job is it, to do whatever the case may be. And you look at one of your, your leaders and, it's everybody's job. I said, so essentially it's nobody's job, right? Because when it's everybody's job, it's nobody's job. Yeah. It's if you don't own it and take complete and total ownership of a task, there's a high likelihood it's not going to get done. So that is something that we work all the time on maintaining, because even though they all know that, they all gravitate away from an administrative clerk work environment back to, the producers that they are. I mean, if you're a thoroughbred, there's one thing you want to do: run. That's it. That's it. And, we have quite a few thoroughbreds, and, they are the ones that generate the dollars that allow us to pay the bills in every other spot in the store. Right. And so those thoroughbred need to be treated as such, not prima donnas, just thoroughbreds. And we have to continue how, with good expense control too, to support them with, the admins and the clerks of the world. And it's not just a luxury, maybe, 10 years ago, we'd be talking 15 years ago about that. It'd be a luxury. Like, wow, you got a lot of clerks here. When I look at my 20 group composites and things, and I look under admin, I got a lot of expenses there, but, we got a lot of gross, and we've got a lot of other things that offset that. And, when I look at the bottom line, somehow we figured it out. And now, with OEMs and with just compliance, state or federal or any number of things, adding clerks, if you will, admin slots, is critical. But you may as well not just do that to push paper around a desk. You may as well do it to support your producers. And so we're trying to hire these hybrid people that, well, 50% of your job is going to be make sure, we hit brand ambassador, to the tune of whatever. So nothing falls through the cracks because, a program like that or something, for another
True.
OEM that has hundreds of thousands of dollars annually or millions on the table. And, your 2-month, employed lube tech missed a certification and just cost you 50 grand or 100 grand and the service manager's too busy, so we're going to hire for a position to make sure that we don't miss out on $400,000 or $500,000, and it's going to be a 6 times return on investment. But we're going to give that person something else to do too, right? They're going to support 3 managers maybe with areas that they're struggling in. So I hope that was an answer to your question, Charity.
Yeah.
I know it took a while to land the jet, but that's my.
You landed it well. If you have thoroughbreds, they need to spend 80% of their time running. That's what they need. If they get bogged down in the other stuff, it just combobulates them. It took me a long time to figure. I only do a few things really well, but I spent a lot of time in my life trying to do the other things that I thought I should do well, but are not part of my makeup and what I do. And having that administrate that was pretty valuable stuff. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, how about tell us something about your stores that would break in 30 days if you weren't paying attention?
Be careful, Scott. No, I'm just
kidding. I got to tell you, I don't think much would break.
Oh, well, that's I don't surprising.
I don't think much would break. Another philosophy I adopted a long time ago was I've never been afraid. As you're growing through the industry from sales into a finance job and a director and a general manager and so on and so forth, you did it because you were producing, productive. You did something right, and you were measured. There was a scoreboard, and you did well on the scoreboard, and promotion came in. And I remember just watching a lot of people that, where they would keep the death grip on the steering wheel, because they had a job and my job was this, and they didn't want anybody else to know how to do it, right? For fear of. And that is how you don't scale. That's how you stay small.
Exactly.
And so my philosophy was just the opposite. So I would invite everybody into my office to sit in the office, and here's how we're going to call in a deal. Here's how we review credit bureaus, and here's how we do apps. And there would be salesmen. We would have class all day long, and anything that I could learn. And it was, I wasn't afraid of being pushed out. I figured I'd be pushed up, and that's pretty much what had happened. So I've stayed that course forever, and our people are, whatever I have in knowledge is anybody can have it. Most people, you can hand them a manual and the keys, and they still won't do it. So I'm not really afraid of sharing knowledge with anybody, because they just won't do it anyway. And so that you don't even make them a competitor. You could give them the keys to the kingdom. But so the knowledge, the culture, the accountability, all that stuff, I think our team has it, all the time. Nobody's perfect. They're not, certainly me either. But I don't think much would break if I don't show up. And I don't show up more and more often, kind of on purpose. That doesn't mean I'm not working or not around. I work from different places, or I'm
Sure.
available to them. And I've just decided to take on some different projects for the stores. A lot more vision for those guys. But we're going to be in good shape. If I don't show up or drop dead, they're going to be okay.
That's powerful. You'd be surprised. More people would answer that in a different way. And that has a lot to do. And I actually suspected you had answered that way based upon the things we've already talked about, because of your level of conviction and confidence in who you are and what you do, and understanding. You couldn't have got where you're at trying to do it all yourself, and you don't want to share it with anybody else. What makes you successful is exactly the opposite. Thank you for sharing that nugget.
Yeah, probably if we were talking to someone that's not doing so great, they would have said everything. Everything would break. If I wasn't there, it would all be a dumpster fire.
Yeah, then you've been leading in the wrong fashion. If that's the case, that's not supposed to be how it's supposed to be, as we know.
Well,
right?
This is our 5th year doing podcasts. A lot of people start them and they don't finish them or don't ever get started.
Congratulations. That is a long time.
Thank you. It's all because of her. But if someone showed and actually, I don't, we've never had a guest that would actually say the opposite. But if they did, a lot of that would be edited out because we don't want our name associated with that. Somebody said, "Oh, it's not my fault; it's his fault." No, hell, how in the hell did you get here?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, how about this one, Scott? When you walk into your stores on any random day, what three numbers do you care about most?
Just out of habit, being a salesman, I kind of roll my eyes right around the corner and depending on where I am to get to the sales board,
Yeah.
what's going on, and then make sure that there's no fires, burning. But that's probably the first number. And I don't lead well, manage well with a ton of structure. I've tried. I thought that structure would help me a lot, and a better calendar and so on and so forth. And now I find white space in my calendar, is actually productive. And I also think that I do a better job and more productive and can contribute more in so many ways with people, the team, whatever, on the fly. It doesn't work for a lot of people. They would call that unorganized. But I like to keep a calendar open so that when something shows up, not a fire, an opportunity, I'm available for it. I don't want to say no because I've committed to. So I don't make a ton of calendar commitments. Now, that doesn't mean I don't have a plan and I sit around waiting for something to, show up at my doorstep. That's a bad plan, right?
Yes,
And I do love, like probably most people, living with a checklist. Who doesn't like, checking something off, scratching that thing off? It, gives you such a good feeling. But, if it doesn't represent something productive, that's not too exciting. And I think, there's people that have dysmorphia, body dysmorphia, right? They think that no matter how beautiful and wonderful they are, there's just something wrong with them. I feel like I might have productivity dysmorphia. No matter what I get done, I just logged, 10 amazing hours, working on some software that's just going to help us. And I'm like, I couldn't do 11,
Well, that's one of the, successful people do daily what average people do occasionally, Scott. So that's what makes you successful. I love the fact that you keep things open because you can be counterproductive. There's a lot of grind to this because I consider myself an entrepreneur starting this company 1 month before me and my business partner, 1 month before COVID hit. And we've been extremely successful, but that's from a lot of mistakes and that we worked through that made us better. One of them was we have 41, 42, phenomenal onboarding process. Okay. People know where they stand, what they're supposed to be doing. And we're all virtual. One of the things we pride ourselves on that people count, they matter, they make a difference. And we let them know it, not to the point where they have to have it to perform, but we're very empathetic towards people and allowing flexible schedules as long as they get their work done, but they know where they stand at any moment. But then you have people that just don't, it's not enough. They probably work too much.
Yeah. And the productivity thing you're talking about, you're moving from this to that. If that makes an individual more productive, that's great. And there's, people who get it done and people who don't watch a clock, people
Sure.
who do, and so on. And, I don't allow remote. That's one thing that I just don't allow. You need to be in the store and be part of our culture to see it and feel it and everything else.
Sure.
I just don't have a job, on the books that allows for it. Not to say that if I really did find something that made sense that you did need to be in the store, it wasn't cultural, it wasn't, witnessing what's happening, I would consider it. But right now, you might be able to stay home and work for a day because you're on something or here or there, but by and large, you're in the store.
Yep. I like that. For many, 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 many years when I was selling, I had a methodology, and 3 days a week minimum, I would come in early and work the service drive. Okay. And then as I worked my up through the ranks, last few years as a GM in a Nissan and Mitsubishi store, it's like, I always got along. I always talked to people and had relationships with advisors and technicians, et cetera. But I was not really a fixed guy. So What about fixed operations for you? I surrounded myself with people that knew intimately about that and would advise me. And we haven't talked much about that, but you did mention advisors and technicians. How's fixed operations going for you?
It's the last couple of years, we are up at both stores probably. One store, we're up 100% in numbers. And the other store is probably up 75 to 80%. Both stores have almost doubled in the last 3 years.
I bet the one
Some of
that's
it
100
was,
is Kia.
well, you're right, actually. But it was mostly because of a production facility issue. Our building was just too small, not enough space. So I purchased some property down the street, 3.5 acres, and it's a 17,000 square foot building. And we put a used car store there because we also needed storage, to keep 300-400 new cars in stock. But it also had 5 service bays down there. So we moved all of our UCIs down there. I moved all of my PDIs down there.
Good.
We put 2 techs in there and some other things. And that freed up time for advisors to sell and we'll call it our main shop, and get people in there and slow down and get them to sell. We also have, it's kind of a hybrid quick lane. We don't have quick lane or identified as that, but we do have advisors, and we assign cars to the quick lane advisors based on miles.
Got it.
And so anybody, we've worked our way down. We started at 50 to see what it was, and 40 as we developed this thing. And I think we're down to anybody under 25,000 miles goes to, and it may be less than that. It goes to the quick lane. We do know there's limited opportunity. There's something there, right? We've got 15Ks and we've got, filters, and we've got a variety of things and flushes and so on. So we give that to those people. And then anything above that goes into the main shop. They're written up by a different set of advisors who slow down and have time to present, so that has been amazing. And when we cleared out the shop, we uncongested it too. Like UCIs can clog up a shop for sure. PDIs, don't have to be in a bay. They can be out in a parking lot with a tablet now, but it's a car here. And when you don't have space,
everywhere.
It was just clogging things up. So it's opened up a ton. And at the Hyundai store, we went through about a $10 million remodel, which, normally would be a ground up job, but in our case, it was a remodel. And we expanded our service department in the bays, and that has helped. We did the same thing with regard to the quick lane and other advisors. We work with Dynatron, and we've been with them for probably about 4 years. And we've definitely had I've always understood ELR and the importance and some of those things. I don't think that our service managers in the past, have really done a good job understanding the critical nature of that. I have technicians that don't know what it means. I have advisors, for them not to understand what that concept is pretty mind blowing. They all do now. They all do now.
Dynatron knows they know there's, what?
Yeah. Those things have all really, really made a significant impact in the business. And, we are working so hard on maintaining, a super strong ELR so that we can file for, a super strong labor rate increase on warranty. That, on the culture side of that's a big part of our culture. We've locked discounts out. Nobody can discount. If you're going to discount, it's got to, go through a manager. And by the time you find somebody, hopefully you've written the deal up and whatever. And we've also in the service drive added a position that I've, I talked, and didn't act on it for years, that we should have a TO manager in the service department. We TO every up that comes in the sales department, and most of the time we TO them twice. We have a manager whose title is actually TO manager, and they see how many people that they see, but we had nobody in the shop. So we took somebody from the sales department at the Kia store and put her in the department with no experience. I gave her some. It's an AI repair analysis tool that I built, and she's leveraged that. She is understanding how an MPI works. She's learning her way around there. And in the first 3 full months, she has averaged about, I think her numbers are averaging now somewhere around $55,000 a month in upsell.
Oh my gosh.
TOing TOing declines. These are people that are there. We're not waiting 3 weeks to send them an email that says, here's 5%.
No.
We're going to get them right now. It's just, and shame on me, right? For knowing, I said, this is going to be a good
learned
idea.
what you learned when you learned it.
Yeah, I should have, that one should have pulled the trigger on a long time ago. So once we did that, we then found what we think is the right person at the Hyundai store. And he spent a couple of weeks training with her. It's a process. He has a little more background in the dealership at a little bit of a higher level. And he's pacing, this is his first full month. And he's pacing the low mid 40s right now. And I think that he'll get to 50 all day long. That's how much money's been left on the table, in fixed ops for us all this time. Unbelievable.
You get it. It's like salespeople maybe talk 2, 3, whatever it is a day. And advisors is like 10 a day. It's triple. And it's like they don't have that relationship active. All those things are imperative. And what you did with the PDI and UC, that was phenomenal. Get that out of the way. Man, it's good for you, man. I hope everybody out there heard that one right there from Scott. Okay.
Well, Scott, we have so many more questions, but not enough time. So if it's all right with you, I want to ask you one question about a vendor and then we'll wrap up. I have a lot of questions about vendors. I'm kind of fascinated at how dealers see vendors in general. In your opinion, what's a vendor behavior that earns your long-term trust? And then, of course, the opposite. What immediately do you see from a vendor and you just say, you walk away?
I think you need to know your product before you walk into a store. I remember when a digital paid search team, and this is a big company, that had been pitching us, and they would send different people in or out, or we would meet with somebody that would at least knew what they were doing at a little bit of a higher level, and I think we were giving them serious consideration, and they sent in, I'm just going to describe who it was, not because I'm meaning anything derogatory, but
sure.
In comes, a recent. And I found this out because I had to ask the question, college graduate, young female. And she just immediately impressed me as somebody who didn't know anything about digital strategy. And I started asking her questions about SEO and a couple little things. And she had no answers whatsoever. And then I asked her how long she'd been out of school recently and excited about your new job. She goes, I really am. She told me about all that. And I said, you're going to be in trouble. I said, a ton of trouble. I said, hopefully this will be a great meeting for you. We're not going to be able to do business because you don't know anything about this. She just says, I really don't. And I said, you should go back and you should really get in your manager's, grill about this and say, how do you expect me to go out and talk with dealers? Because probably most dealers would say, just get out, or I'll take my box of donuts and, your nice eye candy sitting here and hang out with you today. And, that's what she would get and never learn or never grow. And that was the vendor that I didn't respect. I remember that story because there's still quite a few of those. And, I think that, picking anybody out, I just think that those things develop. You can kind of spot the good ones a little bit at the beginning, how much effort they put in, when are they willing to talk? Do they only work off of a standing meeting, which I hate. Those are the things that I've eliminated from my life. Is a standing meeting. A standing quick lunch. Those are just time sucks. They're stealing from me.
Yeah, just give me the $500 and don't worry about all that. Right?
So that these vendors that are available when I need them to be available. Those are vendor partners, and so they pick up their phone, they answer an email, they're responsive, they're engaged, and they're knowledgeable. They are students of the game, right? It's their craft, they get it, and they respect what we are doing and trying to do. And those are the people that you like keeping in your professional life.
Does it matter if it's virtual or they have to be in front of you, or are you okay either way as long as the job's getting done and you can communicate?
Yeah. What's the nature of my solution journey? If we can solve the problem and wind up with the solution, on a Zoom, then let's get it done. Sometimes that's more impactful, right? Because we're sharing things. I mean, there's nothing worse than, somebody coming out with a laptop and wanting to turn it around, and go,
Yes.
let's see if either one of us can see it. I go, do you see that chart? I do see it. Yeah. Not that well. Like, you should have just stayed in your office, and we could have done this. This would have been effective, right? And as opposed to that meeting, that's a dumb meeting. And then there's other times, when we need to walk around, I guess, but we can get a lot done remotely.
Yes, you can.
That's so
It's
funny.
very efficient, much more efficient. And
Right.
definitely, we value your time too, and we don't want to keep you too long. And I have a ton of questions, but I'll skip to the very end and ask you, Scott, is there anything you expected to mention or that we didn't ask you today that you wish we had?
No, I was your guest. I was, I'm here to answer your questions. So
Oh, we had a lot more too.
Yeah, we appreciate it as well. We know
Yeah.
your time is very valuable. So
No worries. No worries. I was happy to be here. Thank you. It was great talking with you guys, and people like you, and talking about the business is always exciting for me. And I leave the conversation amped up and a little more motivated to go produce.
yeah, and we learn so much from our guests,
We do.
and we really appreciate talking to all the different perspectives and sharing it with our audience.
Right. Absolutely.
That's good stuff.
We're humbled, honored, and grateful, Scott. Scott Falcone, dealer, principal of Dealer World and World Hyundai Madison and Joliet, right? Joliet?
Yep,
Did I say
that's
that right? Okay. Sometimes I wonder if I say Joliet, right? But listen, we're humbled and honored once again to have you on. And a lot of you, when this comes out, you're going to love the nuggets dropped. I encourage you to watch it, to listen, take note, reach out to him, say hello, whatever. There's a lot of tidbits there. Most people keep coming back and keep coming back. And we've been so successful because of having people like you on that drop those nuggets right there. That's what we're known for, instead of just a bunch of nothing there. And you brought a lot of value to our listeners and to Charity and I as well. We're grateful. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you. I enjoyed my time with you guys. Appreciate it.